All right, and we are back on the Prometheus Deep Dive podcast, the CNC podcast. Today, my co-host is Matt. Matt, how you doing today, man?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing good. How are you doing, Casey?
I'm doing okay. So before we dive into it, for those who don't know Matt, he played in a game, not with me, but in the prior season of Zoomvivor, which he had also played with Colin.
Woo!
Lauren is an alumni of that game as well. Funny thing, before we actually kick into this, is that the previous episode, episode 6, it didn't make the episode, and I can't remember if I actually put it in on the cutting floor episode, but Colin actually has like this 2 to 3 minute piece where he's talking about you. He
Oh,
never
no way.
says your name. I don't think he officially ever says the game, but he goes into like this big story about you. And then ultimately, your betrayal felt like a breakup to him.
Oh,
And
Colin.
yeah, so he ends up actually saying, like, because of the way that you because of what happened with you and the way that he had played in his first game is why he slightly switched up his tactics and strategies in this game and is playing the way he did. I
I love
really
that.
wanted to put it in, but it just was such a long piece that it would have, like, I think it would have shot it over like at the hour mark. But anyway,
Yeah.
just thought I'd let you know that.
Yeah,
Um
no, that's super fun. We live in each other's heads run free in these games, I think. So we always have fun when we play together. So I love Colin. I mean, he's killing this game. So I've been enjoying watching him. So I'm glad he's switching stuff up.
all right, so we'll get right into it. We'll start off with the boot. So, what were you thinking with that time at the temple and with Joe?
Yeah, I think that Joe's boot definitely kind of caught me off guard. I was kind of like expecting that he would be catching some votes this game, like especially once merge started happening and people saw him as a challenge threat. And then this was kind of the first time that he was really publicly available to get all these votes. And so I knew that he'd probably be catching maybe a couple, but yeah, I kind of thought that Lauren might have been getting it at the end. So that was a nice little blind side on your part, Casey. But yeah, it makes sense looking back. It makes sense that he got the votes, but there's a couple key things in there that led to that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of sucks towards the very end of Tribe Life leading into the temple. There's a moment in which Kyle and Joe are finally in a room together because, we've seen a lot from Kyle throughout this season so far. He's always talking, he's going to flip, he's going to do this, he's going to do
Yeah,
that. And I mean, he finally flipped this time, but, he does say that, he can't do the messenger thing. He prefers to do it, face to face. And
mm,
we could have potentially had a whole different outcome there had they just
yeah,
had a moment to actually talk.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it was a little surprising to me when Joe got out. But I think even all the players in the game were thinking that it was going to be next round that someone would flip.
Right. I
So
think a lot of us could kind of like see it coming, but didn't really think that this was going to be the round that it would happen. So it was a fun little twist at the end. But yeah, I didn't really see him getting super far just because it kind of felt like he was building this threat level that kind of just seemed unattainable at a certain point. And so it would have been super impressive if he could. But I saw his days numbered, but didn't see it here. So that was definitely a surprise.
yeah, and I mean, he says that right at the very end of the episode in his exit confessional.
Totally.
He says he didn't see himself, making it to the end. Um, but I honestly, I think Joe would have been better off not winning the challenge at the merge. Because then that just finally solidified him. Whereas I think, like, had he had not won, but still had won that category of who's the biggest, comp beast,
Right.
it would have just been like, oh, because he had only really won one challenge before that, and he did really well on the relay.
Yeah.
I don't remember anyone's times off hands, but the funny thing is that I believe the person who had actually done the best out of everyone was Kyle. Kyle had finished his slide puzzle in, I think, 25 seconds. Nobody had finished a puzzle that quick.
Yeah. That was
So,
crazy.
yeah, I mean, for me, when I was testing that out, I think it took me a little over a minute. which, even though Joe was doing a jigsaw puzzle, he wasn't doing a slide puzzle. Joe's time was like just a little over a minute.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, he said he wasn't going to make it far, but it's just really funny that his read was completely wrong. He's like, I want Kyle to win. I completely trust Kyle. And
I
then we see
know.
the vote. And then
It's
I don't
interesting.
trust Colin. And then so
You know, it was a good round when the person leaves and they're like, I could see it coming, but then the reason that they explained why it was coming was kind of like off from what actually happened. Like that was all. That's a good round, you know.
yeah, I mean that they really got him. So,
Yeah,
but
totally.
the funny thing is I think Joe, like Joe said, he kind of saw it coming, especially after Lauren's speech at the temple. But the people that were really caught off guard were Colin and Anna.
Yeah.
Now, I have to figure it out before we end up doing season 2, but I have no clue why the recording recorded the way it did, because when I was screen sharing, the boxes were really, really, really tiny, so it's really hard to see the facial expressions of the other cast members.
Sure.
But you can still see them if you go back. Just watching Colin's face progressively get like,
I saw
what is
Collins.
going
My eyes
on?
just kind of always glance towards Colin just because we're friends. And so it's like the familiarity there. So I'm always watching his expression. And that was a good one because he was just like, it was a slow roll. Like you could see him consciously being like, I need to reel this in, but he like couldn't. Like he was like,
Yeah, I was cracking up at it. And Anna's the same way too, although Anna's got like where Colin is just visibly like confused and angry. Anna, like, I don't know, she's got like a quirky way of always doing things. And so like
yeah,
you'll see the like head tilts and the like confusion. And
yeah,
that was her, which I thought was really funny. Um, but yeah, I mean, they were really thrown off guard with that whole vote.
totally. Yeah. And it's interesting too because like Anna just had that moment too where she was like making a conscious choice to not work with Lauren because Lauren had kind of made that ultimatum of like, I think it would be best for you to keep me around for this reason. And Anna was like, I respect that she's doing this, but I want to make my own choice. I think she's underestimating me. And it's interesting because I agree that she is being underestimated, but in this moment, she kind of proved that like Lauren does have some sway in things. Like it is a good idea to kind of work with Lauren because clearly Lauren's not going away yet, you know? So it's interesting. It's interesting kind of to like build up your credit and show that you aren't able to be underestimated, but then still be wrong. I don't know. It's a cool arc for Anna this episode, I think. So
Yeah. And I think the thing is that like obviously Lauren is the type of player, as we've even seen, and many of other people have seen, she's definitely the type of player that shouldn't be underestimated. And I
right.
think all of the Titans never underestimated her.
Mhm.
They pretty much knew what kind of poison they were getting when they decided to keep her around round after round after round.
Right, right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, she definitely, I'm not going to strip any credit of her, but she definitely had a hand in keeping herself in the game. But which I think this is now the point where we shift to, we'll just say, the tribe life segments.
Yeah,
The real people that had more so a hand in it were obviously Andrew and Kyle.
totally.
But even more, if we get a little bit more specific, personally, I think the credit goes to Andrew. Andrew says right in the beginning of the episode, like, could potentially be the time to flip. And then he
Yeah,
makes the decision to flip, and he's the one that kind of, kicks it
yeah,
all off. So
yeah.
with these both tribe life segments, what were you feeling about everything?
I loved the Andrew and Kyle moments this episode. I was like, where are we getting at with this? Because we hadn't fully seen so much of that. And I was like, is this setting seeds for them a couple rounds from now doing something together? Or is this happening like right now? So I loved that part. I agree that Andrew seems to be the ones with the gears turning because he was the one that was kind of presenting the opportunity to Kyle because Kyle was expressing interest, but he was the one that was kind of like, we should really do this like sooner than later. And I like Andrew's game right now. Since the beginning, I've kind of been like, he's playing a really quiet game, but he's doing enough that like, I feel like if I was playing with him, I could see him playing well. And I'd be like, I just want to be in with that. It seems like somebody I could work with. And so
Mhm.
I've really been liking Andrew's game. So I really like seeing him this episode. And it was nice to be fit in with a bunch of chaos. Like their conversations were kind of like this rational, stoic friendship while everybody else was kind of like, who voted the fuck this way though?
Yeah. Which, I mean, obviously all credit to, well, majority credit to Caitlyn, because
Yeah.
obviously David did vote for Carolina. So that's one of the votes. Kyle did throw his vote, although to my knowledge, because the information that I have is what was in any sort of messenger chat and in their confessionals. To my knowledge, Kyle was just throwing his vote. I
Mhm.
don't know if he truly had any rhyme or reason behind putting Andrew, but we know Caitlyn had all the tactical reasons to throw Colin down.
Right, right. Yeah.
So,
It felt like Kyle said something about like not wanting to vote for the first person who goes to jury so that they don't have like a sour taste in their mouth, I think. And I think that's a valid idea. I just don't think it was like as thought out as Caitlyn being like, I'm trying to induce paranoia. So I think that throw a vote was more um, aimed than randomly cast.
yeah. And I mean, given the perception of all the players, the Titans had the perception pre merge that,
Mhm.
Colin was running the show.
Right,
And in a sense, he was. I mean,
right,
he was kind of the center of the whole tribe.
totally.
Um, and then, yeah, I mean, we saw in the, touchy subjects, Feast for Dionysus, whatever the hell you want to call it, that challenge, that the perception that was pretty much everyone's perceptions that Colin's social, Colin
Right,
thinks he's running the game. So I mean that was it was the best place to put that vote because
right.
Andrew got the vote and didn't pay it too much mind. I mean, he brought it up at multiple points,
Mhm.
but yeah, very perfect place to put it. And the paranoia was the like best part. It was so
Totally.
entertaining.
Yeah, because I felt like it made sense of a vote. Like, oh yeah, of course somebody's going to try to get Colin to be suspicious because everybody kind of has this idea that he is doing really well right now, which I agree. He's kind of killing it. I would love to see him continue to kill that. I'm nervous now that Joe left that might be a little bit hard because Joe was a big target the same way that Colin might be right now. But yeah, so that vote made sense. And so nobody was like, why would they pick Colin? It focused the conversation to more on who did it rather than why was it Colin, which I think was the big paranoia inducer. And that was really interesting on Caitlyn's part. So I thought that was a really cool move. And it worked too, because we saw Colin still kind of wanting to work with her this round and having a conversation about how they felt like kind of, I don't know, good with each other ish, like in the loosest of terms, which is really good for future rounds when you don't vote for each other. So yeah, it was just smart on Caitlyn's part. I thought that was a really fun move and definitely a highlight of this game so far. So
Yeah.
good job,
And
Caitlyn.
and with that too, I mean, they did say, like Caitlin, mark your vote, like that way we know that you're voting.
Yeah, she was like, that's
The
such a good idea. I wish somebody did that last round.
Yeah. So, but I mean, as we did see though at the end of the episode, she did mark her vote.
Yeah,
She didn't vote Lauren, but
yeah.
she marked her vote still. Which I mean, if we get into the actual semantics of what was being said,
Mhm.
I think you can look at it as she didn't necessarily say she was going to vote for Lauren and star.
Yeah,
She just said she was going to star or vote.
yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out if her starring her vote for the person that just got blindsided helps or hurts her game, or if it really doesn't do anything at all.
Yeah, I'm curious because on one hand, it's either like I did mark my vote, so I gave you a little bit of trust in showing you specifically like how I voted. I wouldn't have done that if I didn't want you to know or think you deserve to know. But it's also still I have my own game and I'm not just folding for you, but I'm giving you this idea that we can work together. Or somebody's going to see it and be like, I mean, that was a blatant middle finger. So who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. And I mean, that's another thing too, is like, just looking at, laying all the players out, people have that, once again, that perception that Caitlyn wasn't playing the game. She was, I guess, at the bottom. Those are the types of people you want to work with. So,
Mhm.
you could at least hope from this situation that moving forward, they can maybe make something happen because
Totally.
now the tribal lines are kind of getting erased. We've had two people flip, but we at least see that the three girls were still together.
Right. Right.
So,
And that was something I was like really torn up seeing this episode. I was like, are the three girls that we have seen from the beginning be tight with each other going to be really actually falling into these like paranoia traps, or are they going to stay strong? And looks like they stayed strong, so that's fun.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they did get a little bit, paranoid.
Yeah,
It's funny. You did have Caro say multiple times during the episode, like, I mean, I can't get caught up, and I can't get caught up in it. But she
yeah,
does still. She does. And Colin says the same thing. But we also know that he does kind of think that it matters a little bit. But then he
yeah.
also does say in his confessional, like, the reason for that vote was, to either cause chaos or
Mhm.
someone went rogue. And that was 100% true. Someone was trying to cause chaos. They're trying to cause paranoia.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, that's funny. They say that they weren't going to get caught up in it, but they do. And honestly, that paranoia left a huge hole open that no one noticed. And that's how Andrew kind of snuck through and set
totally.
everything up to be the way it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting. It's funny when like both like Colin and well, mostly Colin. I guess, I mean, Caro too. Both of them seemed really practical about the vote itself, but they were also like not able to avoid the paranoia that came with it. Like one of those, it's like it's interesting because you can be cognizant of it and then still just be like clearly affected by it. And it's interesting for them to be like openly saying that I don't mind when people vote for me. We can move forward from that, because that sometimes gives people who want to throw a vote the next round an idea to give it to you because you won't be mad about it or something. And those can clearly cause issues if there's any twist or anything like that. So I'm curious to see if that's going to be a little bit foreshadowing for them to get some stuff in the future. But yeah, it's good to play it off and say it's not the end of the world. I think they're practical in that sense, but it scared me a little when they're like, it doesn't bother me. Like, I'm like, I mean, you should express some disinterest in getting votes, but it was still smart. So
Yeah. And it really is funny, like watching everyone try and guess like who did what, whatever. We do also see, Joe, for instance, he had still discussed things, who did what. But towards the end of the episode, I think it's Caro that says, yeah, Joe was like trying to shrug off like who voted for who. That's because you fucking voted for me or something like that, which is very funny that like the one person after a while who did try and shrug the vote off ends up,
yeah,
because then they all think that he's the shit stirrer,
yeah.
because of what he had said ultimately about what Lauren had said about Caitlyn.
Right.
Kind
Yeah. I know all
of,
of that was interesting. I was like, how is this turning out right now? But turned out
yeah.
okay for them. So,
I mean, there was a lot that was going on that episode. This was a particularly harder episode to edit because, at four different points, four different names get thrown out. Joe's name is thrown out, Anna's
right.
name is thrown out, Caitlyn's name is thrown out, and wait, who'd I miss? Caitlyn, oh yeah, Lauren, duh. Yeah,
Yeah.
Caitlyn, Lauren,
Yeah.
Joe, and Anna. So yeah, it's just very interesting that all those names got thrown out, but obviously it kind of early in the second portion of Tribe Life kind of got more so settled pretty quickly on Joe going home.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because it started this like going into this round, I was like, oh, Joe's gonna be in trouble if he doesn't win immunity. And then he didn't win immunity, and I was like, oh, Joe's in trouble. And then like 2 seconds later, you have 30 minutes of being like, oh, Joe's probably gonna be fine. And then Joe went home. So it's a bummer. He played a good game. He
Yeah,
played a good game.
absolutely. So something else that I want to kind of pivot to. Um, I absolutely love Lauren. I'm sure you love Lauren. We all come from the same group. But I had a couple people message me, and I was actually around someone last night who was watching the episode getting very frustrated at Lauren because right now the sorry, Lauren, but the general consensus is people are getting very annoyed with Lauren from a viewer perspective. So with that being said, how are you feeling about Lauren, especially given, her ultimatum and how she's been talking to Anna? Because we do see very clearly in the episode that when we look at things, on paper, Lauren really is in no position to be demanding people's names
Yes.
and doing this, that, and the other. but she is very aggressive in her approach. And even from a very hypocritical side of things, Lauren and Caro were kind of hypocrites this episode by saying, Anna gives us nothing, that, or as Caro said, that bitch is giving me nothing, but then at the end of the day, they are giving her nothing,
Right.
every single time Lauren turns it around. Lauren does not have very much tact in my opinion,
Sure.
but
Well,
I mean, I get where people are coming from, but I'm very curious, how you're
mhm.
feeling about it.
Yeah, so I love Lauren. I think watching her play these games, and I've seen her in a couple of them, she's like one of my favorite people I've like ever watched play these games because she is always going to give you some phenomenal answers at Tribal. She's always going to cause enough drama that like people kind of like are on edge with her, but they still see like the value in working with her. She presents herself as a shield to a lot of people because a lot of people think, oh, we can turn this on Lauren if we need to stick around one more round or something because people are already annoyed with her. She's a phenomenal strategist. I think that she constantly is looking at numbers, and you can see that in her confessionals. A lot of them are really game oriented. She's also fiercely loyal. If she's on your starting tribe and you connect with her early on, like she's going to work that whole game with you. And even if she like strays from you, it's probably like she'll probably tell you if she's going to, and then like the next round, like they'll be like, and now we can work together or something. So I love Lauren in that regard. I think socially she is on the opposite side of where she dominates strategically because I think that and I think that affects her strategy. Like I think that we see a lot of her strategy come out of her being in hard spots socially, and so she plays from the bottom really well, and she always kind of knows how to get herself like around ahead. But because of the kind of public perception of her being like intense when she's paranoid, and she kind of ups her games when she's in tough spots, which is like not always what you want to be working with, she constantly kind of gets herself in these situations where she can't plan like long term besides the core group that she's already with, and then maybe an exit plan that like is a last ditch effort. And I love her in that regard because it always keeps it interesting. So I would love working with Lauren if I started the game with her, but if she was on an opposite tribe, I'd probably be pretty nervous of her. And I think people are starting to see that. Like we even saw Joe's end confessional, like how is she still here? And I think that's a testament to her game. So game stuff aside, like social stuff aside, like she might be rubbing people the wrong way, but I think she plays pretty well. But that being said, one last note about her is just that I don't love the way that she kind of presents these ultimatums to people. Like when she's talking to Anna, she's like, this would be like a bad move for you to go against me. I think you kind of have to make it seem like you're coming up with a plan organically together, and that like you don't hear a lot of like, oh, that's a good idea, but I still think we should do this. You hear a lot of, that's incorrect. I think you would be better if we did this. Like that, like it doesn't show a lot of like promise to have your opinions heard. And so I can see why that doesn't make people want to work with you if you're not already working with her and have the same goals in mind. So that's kind of how I see Lauren. But she's fun to watch and she's fiercely loyal. So I think
Yeah.
that's cool.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. I think, and as I said a little bit earlier, like she doesn't have any tact, she doesn't really, and this is part of the, her social game, she doesn't really do, or I would like to say Lauren understands what is appropriate, but she doesn't necessarily do what's appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And, even going to what you said about, all the speeches she makes, both during tribe life and at the temple, in my mind, and I think I remember this probably in Zoomvivor as well, like she is more articulate and is mostly correct in how she explains things. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is another really big red flag to me of why this person needs to get out,
Right.
And so I don't know. It is a little baffling, watching some of her. I mean, I don't think she's ever won a game. So, in Zoomvivor, I think pretty much once they got down to the Americans, she was like one of the final American boots. But yeah, I mean, she doesn't know how to talk to people, I think, sometimes. And I think that really hinders her, which is also probably why she got voted most annoying in the touchy subjects thing. And you know what? To an extent, I almost feel in terms of the strategy side of things, Andrew's the same way. Andrew knows how to talk to people, but the strategy side, he and Lauren are very, very similar in that regard.
I wish they would come together.
Well, that's the thing. Are they coming together? Or are they fighting? Because as we do know, in their last game, Lauren burned him hard. And if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, he might have been like the merge boot, so he finally got to the merge just to be burned, really bad
Yeah.
by Lauren. And Lauren talks very plainly about it, in all her confessionals. Hey, if Andrew's going to be an asset to me, I'll keep him around. I'll work with them. If not, like, I'm not going to work with them. So it's
Yeah.
just very interesting. Whereas I think Andrew doesn't have a ton of confessionals in regards to Lauren, but he says that, he's willing to work with her. At least we think.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They both are very, strategic and smart players. And if you just, and I'm not saying to you specifically, but in general sense, if you just listen to them, you can so tell that above almost any other player in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Their gears are always turning, which I like to watch for sure.
Yeah. So do you, and we can completely skip over, have any thoughts about the challenge and Colin winning?
Yeah. I thought the challenge was cool. I love that Colin won it. I was like manifesting that. I like wanted him to win an immunity challenge this season. So good job, Colin. He killed it. I'm glad that I'm talking about it right now. I thought it was fun too. I thought it was going to last a little bit longer. I thought it was funny when someone was like, "Oh, the setup for this quickness," but I think that just kind of shows that Colin killed it. So good job, Colin. I love that these Zoom games you're able to have like physical challenges like that, because a lot of the online formats you can only really have like puzzles and computer-based ones. So anytime you're standing up and gotta do some little finagling, and I don't know, I love all this cup stack challenges and all those things. So anytime like that, I'm having fun. That's like the challenges that I like. So it was a good episode for the challenge too.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Some of these challenges, you're right, they are computer based, or and obviously we borrowed games from other orgs as well, and from actual Survivor too. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes these games, they can get a little crapshooty, and they can also it ends up being like the same challenges with solo cups and ping pong balls and crap like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. I played this challenge in my last game, and we had people, because we had like 24 hours to complete the challenge. We had to record it and send it in, and there were some people that had upwards of like 8 to 10 minutes that it was taking to do this challenge.
Oh wow, interesting.
So yeah, because it was just like whoever got it in the fastest time. So for me, originally speaking, in the episode, the demonstration was actually me completing the challenge in a other season, and it took me a long time to get my score. And my score, I believe, was 21 seconds, which is pretty damn good. So I remember actually saying it, and it didn't make the episode because it was just when I was going through like the super intense detail of the challenge to the players. I was just like, yeah, you guys, like, I don't think you're going to be able to get it in 21 seconds. So like, this challenge could potentially be going on, for a while. And I think we had about 20 to 30 minutes blocked out for this challenge. I didn't think it was going to take 30, but I did not think it was going to take about 3 minutes for the whole challenge to be complete. So
yeah, Colin made it look like he came from a long line of aqueduct builders.
So Colin did really well, and I'm very happy that he did get the immunity for that round. So, yeah. But yeah, anything else in regards to the challenge then?
Not so much. It was kind of a quick one. It served its purpose. Got people up, stretched out. Good challenge.
And then any other thoughts on Tribe Life before we move on to the Ember Award?
I didn't talk much about Caro yet, and I just kind of wanted to say that she's been playing really well. Early on in the game, I kind of picked her out. I kind of just like, when I watch these, we'll just like pick a random person and just be like, I want to see how you do, and I hope you do well. And I just like manifest it. And she was my person for that. And she's been really killing it. And I feel like she's had a lot of say in a lot of these votes. And even if it doesn't really go her way, she still kind of like has enough like outward reasoning for people to be like, hey, Carl's playing this game. So yeah, I'd love to see her get to the end. And she's doing a good job at kind of maintaining her threat level right now. So good job, Carl.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So one other thing. This is something that I've been talking to with a couple different people, because I like throw these episodes into a bunch of different group chats. Like, hey, episode 7 just dropped. The topic of favorites, and the couple times I've just straight up asked people who their favorite is. Do you have a current favorite or set of like favorites right now? I mean, Colin, obviously, I've heard you talk about many times.
Yeah, Colin is my favorite, just because like I like rooting for people that I like talk to a lot, like in real life. It's just fun for me to be like, yes, I love seeing them do well. That being said, I feel like I would still be rooting for Colin if I hadn't seen him before this game and knew him. He's been playing just really well, and I think he's like playing a dominant game, and he obviously has that big target on his back. But I've seen in a lot of these games that that's not a bad thing, and if you can get to the end with that, then you just have like less of a hard chance of winning. You know, like you have a better chance of like people being like, oh yeah, you played this game, now just back it up and we'll give you the win. I think it's going to be hard now that Joe left, because I think that would have been a nice shield for him for a while. So I hope that Colin can keep this up, but he's definitely one of my favorites. Caro as well. And then I really do love Caitlin. She's been another one that I've been like, I like the way your brain works. So Caitlin's another favorite of mine.
All right, awesome. So moving on to the Ember Award. For those who don't know, the Ember Award is pretty much like the MVP, the player of the episode. Everyone's got their own criteria about who deserves the Ember Award, but nonetheless, we still ask. And so, Matt, who would you like to award your Ember Award to?
I have two ideas, so I'm kind of curious to see who you would say, because I'll pick the other one. But I can go first if you want me to. Yeah. Okay. So I'm between Andrew and Caitlin. I think Andrew was the reason the person who went home. So you can't say that like they don't get it for that reason. But I think that was only really like super possible right now without anybody noticing, because Caitlin like really started this paranoia bomb that I love to see in these games. I love craziness. And if you can start craziness without being a part of it, like you nailed it. And I think kind of everything that happened this round set Caitlin up to like make good connections going further. And I think that Andrew might have like gotten the vote to go where it did this episode, but I think Caitlin just used this specific episode to like really boost her chances of going far further. So I'm going to give it to Caitlin. I'm locking it in.
All right, awesome. So yeah, this is something that I was thinking about. I came down to the same two people, and I was like,
okay.
Clearly they're the two standouts of the episode. So
Yeah.
who do I award it to? Who do I award it to? And I was like, I think regardless of who I award it to, I at least need an honorable mention.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to say is I'm going to award mine to Andrew with an
Yes, I
honorable
knew you
mention
would.
to Caitlin. So before I dive into Andrew, I just want to say for Caitlin, Caitlin had set things up really well. I would say that in a sense, she was on the bottom of the Titans. She's looked at it as the person who wasn't playing the game, and then she pulls this off, and no one knows she pulls it off. But for the Ember Award of this episode, technically speaking, it was a move that she had made in the prior episode that we're seeing the effects of in this episode. Whereas Andrew, the reason I give it to him is Andrew is in the dominant alliance. He has played, he is very strategic. He is very social. He has built bonds with all four other members of the Titans. He has, depending on how you want to officially rate his relationship with Lauren, he has the relationship with Lauren. He has extended over to the other Titans, and especially as we saw in the prior episode, Caro. So he's in a good social situation. He is very strategic. He saw the paranoia, and he still, talked about it. But it reminds me of kind of the SpongeBob episode where they're trying to reteach SpongeBob how to be like a server and a cook, right?
And all it's in his brain is
just people running around, the brain's
manners
on fire.
and fine dining. Yeah.
So like that's what's happening in the game. And then you just have Andrew with his box of secrets walking through, and he's like, okay, here you go, Kyle. Here's the plan. And then there you go, Lauren. And here's the plan. So like, that's what I kept imagining the whole time I was editing the episode, because I did not know this much information while the game was going on in that cycle. So it was super fun to see it. And every time I thought about it, I was just like, yep, this is SpongeBob's brain. Everyone's going crazy. And there's Andrew with like the fucking Death Star battle plans or whatever you want to say, just handing out everyone. And he made it happen. And he's still in a good spot. Everyone, likes him. Whether or not Anna and Colin like him is yet to be seen. But So that's why I got to give it to Andrew. Caitlin still deserves a very much an honorable mention
Totally.
because her actions brought a ton of entertainment this episode.
Yeah. And she played it so well. I like she set the seeds last episode, and in this episode, she was like watering the garden while everybody watched. It was
Mm-hmm.
cool. And
And
Andrea was like overseeing the garden.
I absolutely loved it. I really did. Caitlin, that was a great move. It really was. And I love how even though they didn't talk about it, somehow this, witch's brew, stirring the pot, metaphor, came up because
Yeah.
it was a witch hunt, or it was kind of a witch hunt.
Mhm.
So yeah, definitely honorable mention to Caitlin, but my official award goes to Andrew.
Well deserved.
So do you have any final thoughts?
Hmm. Um, I hope people keep flipping. I hope that this was the start of many flip-flops, and that people start to capitalize on some of these breakings of trust. And I think that this is the first episode of a lot of fun stuff. So I'm excited to see what happens.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt, for coming on today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you can remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Casey Needs a Coast, that'd be greatly appreciated. And on that note, everyone, have a good night.